This is the Sunday Evening Crier from the Lawton Town Crier. I'm your host, Garrett Jackson, and tonight we're going to walk through what happened in the Ward 4 runoff election, how we got here, and what it means for the balance of power on the Lawton City Council. Back in September, voters in Ward 4 didn't pick a clear winner. It was a crowded field. When the votes were counted, no one hit 50%, so the race was headed to a runoff between incumbent George Gill and challenger Tiffiney Dimery. According to the September results, Tiffiney Dimery led the first round with about 44% of the votes cast, while George Gill, the incumbent, trailed with around 39%, just under, and the remaining votes were split among the other candidates. That set up a classic runoff scenario, an incumbent trying to claw back ground and a newcomer trying to get a plurality into a clear majority. The runoff election was held on November 18th, with a couple days of early voting. On election day itself, Ward 4 voters had a simple choice on the ballot, a choice between incumbent George Gill or challenger Tiffiney Dimery. Not a long list of names this time, just the incumbent and the challenger head-to-head. When the polls closed that evening and the votes were tallied, the story was clear. Tiffiney Dimery, the challenger, had won the Ward 4 runoff, unseating incumbent George Gill. Reporting from that night showed Dimery taking about 55% of the vote, leaving roughly about 45% for George Gill. In other words, the lead she built in the first round just didn't hold, it grew. Voters who backed other candidates in September mostly did not come home to the incumbent. Enough of them broke ranks and moved towards Dimery to give her a solid, not razor-thin win. On election night, I set up at the Comanche County Courthouse where the election board posts results as they came in. As far as I could see that night, the Lawton Town Crier was the only local outlet physically on location live streaming the results in real time as they were released, starting with early and absentee totals and then the election day precincts as they rolled in. If you were watching that stream, you saw it unfold the same way we did. Dimery building up an early lead, Gill never quite closing the gap, and the final unofficial totals confirmed that Ward 4 had chosen a new voice for the City Council. In the weeks leading up to the runoff, Ward 4 voters weren't just looking at yard signs. There were public events that helped define the race. The Lawton Sill Chamber of Commerce hosted a Ward 4 candidate forum, putting Gill and Dimery side by side on the same stage to answer questions about the city's future. On top of that, there were long-form interviews and TV segments, more chances for voters to see how the candidates talked about issues like economic development, neighborhood concerns, and how they see the role of a council member, as a representative, a decision maker, or both. In that mix, Dimery consistently presented herself as for everybody candidate. Some emphasized inclusion and fresh perspective. After the runoff, she told one TV outlet that the first thing she wanted to do was make sure that even the people who didn't vote for her know that she was going to work just as hard for them as for her supporters. So, what does this actually mean for Ward 4 and the city of Lawton? First, George Gill wasn't a fringe figure. He was a city council member. For a challenger to first beat him in a crowded field and then finish the job in a runoff suggests that a majority of Ward 4 voters who were ready for a change in style and priorities, or both. Second, it changes the math at the council table. Every time you swap out an incumbent for a newcomer, a few things shift. Committee assignments, informal alliances on close votes, and the tone of debate, especially on hot-button issues like development, TIF districts, and neighborhood services. We really won't know how big that shift is until votes start appearing next year. Campaign language is one thing. Roll call votes are another. The real test will come when the Ward 4 has to weigh in on budget, land use decisions, and deals that come across the council's desk. Moving forward, here's how we'll be watching the Ward 4's new council member, Tiffiney Dimery, on the dais. We will be watching how she votes on major spending decisions and developmental projects, especially anything tied to TIFs, tax increment financing, or long-term commitments that the city is going to undertake. Further, whether her promise to be for everybody shows up in how she handles constituent issues and not just big public meetings. Finally, we're also going to watch how she navigates the tension between being a vessel of the people on the one hand and being part of a city council that demands a go along to get along approach just to get things done. In other words, now that the yard signs are coming down, we're entering the part that really matters, governing. That's a quick look back at the Ward 4 runoff and how we got from a crowded field in September to a clear result here in November. If you live in Ward 4, and this is your chance to start building a relationship with your new council member, because the most important conversations don't happen on election night, they happen in the months and years after. I'm Garrett Jackson, and this is the Sunday Evening Crier from the Lawton Town Crier. Stay tuned because we'll be keep following the votes and not just the victory speeches. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you at City Hall.